Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. You're going to hear me moving around a little bit, getting ready again for work, because that's when I can record. So, this is the gift that keeps on giving. I did not expect there to be a part 4, and here I am 24 hours later, about to do a part 5. And I'm also going to thank the Black Manosphere for this one, because one of the first things that I ever said that was ever watched by more than 1,000 people, really by more than 200, was when I talked about Ayesha Curry's first time disrespecting Steph Curry, which was 6 years ago. I remember that being around the end of Ramadan 2019, which was the spring going into the summer, and she did that. And I was learning about reverse colorism at the time, and I saw a pattern here. And that pattern is that, you know what? I mean, you don't really hear about a lot of these women dissing their men the same way when their men are abundantly melanated. And so, therefore, you didn't hear about this. So, at the time, I wasn't sure when it was going to start, if it ever was, and I didn't want it to, but I know that it was generally an absent phenomena at that point. Right now, you look at who it is that's mostly disrespected, and the most often, and it's Will Smith and Barack Obama and Steph Curry. But LeBron James has had his share. We found out that Morris Chestnut has had his share. He was told that a kid was his that wasn't. We found out that Mike Tyson also was raising a kid he thought was his. Turned out it wasn't, and this woman never stopped suing him. So it seems to pretty much follow brothers around, really, to be honest with you. But at the time, I remember covering this, and here she is again, and she just keeps doing it. So, Ayesha, women are coming out and saying now the problem is that she never had a hoe phase. Now, I tell you that this is why it is that we got to leave Sistern alone, because on the continent and in the diaspora, they just want to be wild at some point and still not bear the consequences of the wild choices they make. So they want to be wild, and they want you and me to pick up the tab for it. And the men with whom they want to be wild are not the same men whom they want picking up the tab. So they specifically demand that some men, the least deserving of this, be cuckolded by the least responsible men. And I'm not calling the men the least responsible because they're the ones that are the most sexually attractive to the women. I'm calling them the least responsible because that's one of the criteria that women look for when they're trying to pick which men get to be the bulls and breeders. They're looking for not only an aesthetic, but they're also looking for a type of attitude that suggests a lack of responsibility. No pressure. Well, you know, women like a guy that seems to be what they call cool under pressure and calm under pressure. That's not wrong, except for one thing, and that is that men have pressure. And sometimes you'll see it, and sometimes you won't. But men do go through pressure in life. And so you can't just sit up and say, well, I can see that he's under pressure, and that's just so unsexy. Okay, because what that means is that every guy that's responsible is going to take care of the responsibilities you want. It's going to show at some point, because you're close up on him, living life with him, that he can feel pressure. And if a man is subjected to only pressure and nothing else but pressure and responsibilities and hardship are the only experiences that a man has, that's going to take its toll, and it's going to show. And so women that don't like that sort of thing in men are also going to be the ones who will provoke it. So what we're seeing is pretty much a culture demanding the cuckolding of the least deserving men of that experience. And this is the context in which Ayesha Curry says this dumb shit. And she done already sat down with Jada Pinkett Shakur. And that showed you, because you see, you and I might think, well, Jada Pinkett Shakur, and that ratchet crowd and Michelle Obama, That's an American thing, and for the most part it is. But what people don't realize is that while these sistren are sitting up here trying to tell us brothers that we need to be leery of each other across national boundaries, they're sitting up here in the same hair salons having the same goddamn discussions about how to do the same goddamn things to the same race of men. That validation from a non-black man is everything to them. And that doesn't matter the nationality. And this is what we keep on not understanding. We keep on forgetting this. This is how it is that you got more and more younger and older black men being trained to no longer prefer sisters when they didn't start off like that. It happened to me. I don't have a preference per se racially, except that I don't want them pale and white. I now have a dispreference more than I've got a preference. And I'm knocking on 50. What does that tell you? I know it can happen. I figured it was going to happen to me one day, and it wound up happening. Funny thing is, if I came home one day and my wife was lighter skinned, we'd have a problem. But when I look at the Western Central African phenotype in women, I don't want that anymore because of what I know it means to the women themselves, not because of what it ever really meant to me, but what it means to them. I know what it means to them, and that's a problem. I know what my phenotype means to them, and it's a problem. They can't be neutral about it, so that means it's an issue. I understand all of this. So this is part of why it is that I look at part of why I look at what I'm looking at. And this part 5, well, this part 5 is about really why it is you shouldn't be making approaches at all. And I'm going to tell you this: if you get to a traditional part of the world and the women there have these notions about what all men should be willing to do and how little in exchange they should be happy with getting for all that they must do, then you drop them too and don't approach them. And you tell the local men to do that. And if the local men say, well, we have a way that works, you say to the local men, it's not working well enough for you. You go ahead and start with the reverse of feminism and misandry, and you ruin their society with that teaching, if that's what it is. Now, if the woman has some appreciation for the stuff men do, at the very least, then you could sit up and say, all right, you have an appreciation. So you're not mean and hostile and all that other stuff. So you can leave it alone. But let those women sit back with these notions of, well, the men build the homes, build this, build that. They come to us, they pay us, and they really shouldn't ask us for anything in exchange because they already got us. If the women have this, and this is their traditional society and mindset, you drop them broads too. And you tell the men drop them broads. You tell them there are women in other parts of the world that while they still will look to you to do the same things, they will also show appreciation to you for doing it. And try not to waste it. There's a guy named Gazan in Toronto that was not doing well with women. Look where he lived. He didn't have access to this red pill information, especially the black manosphere. I can tell he didn't have access to it because at some point he decided to go ahead and hire a dating coach. The dating coach said, well, I'm going to videotape your interactions with women and then we'll go through them later on and we'll fix this. The last interaction of that day resulted in his arrest. He was talking to her, things were going well, he said, but then a police officer showed up out of nowhere and he was booked for voyeurism for sexual purposes. And he and the dating coach were booked because the dating coach was filming with a hidden camera. But he wasn't filming to try to look up her skirt like the report said. He was just filming the interaction for dating coaching purposes. The issue is that the dating coach was not trying to set this guy up, from what I understand. The officer's report said that he just observed this from a distance. But the officer said they were going up these stairs and trying to film up her skirt. And I'm sitting up thinking to myself, you got to be effing kidding me. They're outside on the ground floor, and you write this in the report. And that's because apparently there's some political pressure in Canada to put men behind bars for these kinds of things, for being creeps. Now, Ghazan may not be Indian, but he is of a similar phenotype, except his hair is curlier. That would tell me that he's either East African or he's Yemeni, or he's one of the Arabs with a very East African phenotype. That's what it tells me. But maybe he's an Indian with curly hair, or maybe he's from one of the other countries nearby with curly hair. They do exist, although it's generally rare. Whatever the case is, the point I'm making is that he has a phenotype similar to that of the men that the women say they want the least in Canada. In Canada, women lose their self-esteem just because an Indian man approached them. I want you to stop and think about that. Because an Indian man made an approach, a Canadian woman will lose her self-esteem and say, what the hell is it about me that made this guy think he has a chance? That means they want Indian men to know that they are inferior in the eyes of Canadian women. They don't just want the Indian men to not know this. They want them to know this so that they can be easily controlled with promises and innuendo. That's why women like to, while getting their egos fed, they like to crush men's egos. And that's not just black women. It is exaggerated in Western women, period. I want you guys to keep this in mind. He hired, and this was not too long after COVID, from what I understand, but it was, 2 or 3 years ago, I guess. He hired a dating coach, and the dating coach didn't even set him up, and he got arrested. And now there's his mugshot, and people have seen his face, and they think he's a creep. And it's easy for them to think he's a creep because he's of the phenotype that the Canadian women say they want the least, and he was trying to fix his failures with women. And so now he's a creep. Now he's got a mugshot. And even though the arrest turned out to not be the case, apparently he was never convicted. Even despite that, the mugshot is still out there. The disposition is not as easy to find as the arrest and its charges. That's the problem. And this is why I'm looking at these situations. I'm looking at cases like this, and I'm saying, no, you need to stop trying. You, the Black Manosphere, are one of the main reasons that a lot of brothers are not getting into this type of stuff anymore. We cover this. We talk about it. I don't sit up and say that we need to look for allies amongst other races. Some people just have a sense of fair play. Sometimes even white folks have a sense of fair play, and they're not willing to side with their own people. They're rare, but they're there. They do exist. They're generally more quiet and private in their demeanors and the way they live their lives, and for obvious reasons, but they're there. But what I want you to keep in mind is that one thing we should not feel bad about reaching out to tell other men is to not continue making effort to women of any community. There's others that don't appreciate what men go through. Don't do it. Tell these men, do not do it. If you are in Canada and you are an Indian man and Indian women don't know how to respect and appreciate anything from you, then you don't go after them either. And if they make fun of you because you're single and say, well, what are you doing? You're running through bottles of lotion? You tell them, maybe, maybe not. It ain't your business. What are you doing? You can't get that white dude and you don't want a brown man. What are you doing? Going to the horse farm? That's what you start saying to them. And this is one thing to go ahead and start telling other men, even if they ain't allies. That is largely so that one of the things that cannot happen anymore is the normalization of the disposability of men. The normalization of the negative evaluation of men. That's why it is that we should go ahead and start reaching out to these other men, not because we love them or because we just want non-black allies. You know I don't want you thinking that way. Not even in your sleep. But it is because, frankly, damn it, who the hell deserves an ego boost like this as consistently as these Westernicias and sometimes traditional women, depending on the tradition, demand it? This non-stop validation and ego boost of constantly being sought after but never being attained. Who the hell deserves something like that? It's damn near a worship. And the reason I'm telling you all this is a very spiritual reason. It is because what these broads are trying to get out of men is a type of worship. They're trying to get that. Did you know that in Syria, which is a predominantly Muslim country and it's Arabic speaking, there is a religious group that worships the vagina? They ain't Muslim. You can't do that and be Muslim anyway. That's already known. But this actually exists. There, surrounded by Muslims and Christians, you got this.